What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to go over the original 13 members of Organizational 13, and let's go ahead and get into the video. The original Organization 13 was a group of nobodies created by Xemnas, the nobody of Terranort, who is Xehanort in Terra's body. He created this group in order to collect strong hearts as well as many hearts as possible in order to recreate an artificial Kingdom Hearts. However, he did not share this information with everyone in the group, with the majority of them thinking that they had the goal of reclaiming their hearts in order to become whole again. However, the group wasn't without its internal struggle, with some members trying to stage a coup and going rogue. In this video, I'm going to try and explain the members as best I can, who they were before they were nobodies, what they tried to accomplish within the organization, and ultimately how they were defeated and what they are currently doing. So a quick bit of housekeeping. I'm only going to cover the original defeat while they were in the organization. If they were brought back to be one of the 13 Darknesses, I'm going to go over to that in another video. So let's go ahead and get into the first member of the organization, Xemnas, the superior in the in-between. He controls sorcerers, uses the attribute of nothingness and weapons called ethereal blades, which he himself calls interdiction. He's the nobody of Master Xehanort through Terra Xehanort's body. His goal is to create an artificial Kingdom Hearts, and he does this by first turning Ansem the Wise's 5 apprentices, 2 boys with strong hearts that live at Radiant Garden, 3 people who he felt connections to from his past, 1 from a far-off land, which those 3 and that 1 are actually revealed to have a Keyblade legacy that we don't really know what they actually mean by that just yet, and he turns them all into nobodies. Then, finding a nobody Keyblade wielder, with the organization formed, he sends them out to perform their roles in order to enact his plan. During this time, he also comes up with a backup plan, creating a being that he can control that will be able to use a Keyblade using Naminé's powers. In the time we see Xemnas, he does eventually gain enough hearts to create Kingdom Hearts. However, before he can utilize it, he is stopped and ultimately defeated by Sora and Riku. Xemnas was brought back to be one of the 13 Darknesses by Xehanort. Number 2, Xigbar, the free shooter, controls snipers, uses the attribute of space and arrow guns called sharpshooters. He's the nobody of Braig, an apprentice of Ansem the Wise, and technically Wushu of the Foretellers, but we'll get into that in a different video. So Xigbar has a long history, but to sum up some of the more important parts leading up to his time in the organization, he helped Xehanort in his plan to awaken Terra's darkness in order to use him as a vessel, losing his eye in the process and giving him his signature look. He was one of the key influencers in overthrowing Ansem the Wise. He was tasked with finding new recruits for the organization, and he actually ends up finding Marluxia. He goes on missions with Roxas and takes the blame for a botched mission when when Xion knocks him out. He successfully summons a giant Heartless in the Land of Dragons for Sora and his friends to defeat, but he is ultimately defeated by Sora, calling him Roxas the whole time and angry at him for betraying him. Xigbar was eventually chosen to be one of the new 13 Darknesses. Number 3, Xaldin, the Whirlwind Lancer. Controls dragons, uses the attribute of wind and 6 lances called Windworm. He's the nobody of Dylan, another one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices. After betraying Ansem the Wise, Xaldin is given the task of finding new members for the organization, just like Xigbar. While trying to complete this task, he goes on a mission with Roxas to Beast Castle, where he sees the power of the beast and decides to try and make him into a Heartless and nobody for the organization. This becomes almost an obsession for him, as we see he has worked out how the beast's curse work, convincing him Belle is plotting against him and stealing his rose. This would ultimately lead to his demise, as Sora would team up with the beast and defeat him in Beast Castle. He's actually the only nobody to die in a Disney World. Xaldin was reformed into his human body and is currently helping the Guardians of Light, though he seems to have kind of slipped into more of a bodyguard role as opposed to like an apprentice role, but yeah, it's kind of his plot in the story. Number 4, Vexen, the chilly academic, uses the attribute of ice and a shield called Frozen Pride. Nobody of Evan, one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices, who joined Xemnas and was pivotal in the replica program. Vexen guided Roxas within the organization and created the Riku replica in the Castle Oblivion experiment on Sora and Riku. He was eliminated by Axel in order to gain Marluxia's trust and raise Saïx through the ranks in the organization. Vexen was chosen to be a reserve for the Darknesses in order to continue the replica project. However, he ultimately betrays them and helps the Guardians of Light and is back working with Ansem the Wise as of current day. Number 5, Lexius, the Taciturn Stalwart. uses the attribute of Earth and an axe sword called Sky Splitter. The nobody of Alias, one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices, he is put in charge of training Roxas until he is sent to Castle Oblivion to monitor and spy on Marluxia. And while there, he tries to get Riku to stop Marluxia. Lexus, however, is ultimately defeated by Riku, who is being controlled by Ansem. After awaking, he resumes working with Ansem the Wise, seen in more of a guard role. Number 6, Zexion. The Cloaked Schemer uses the attribute of illusion and a lexicon called Book of Retribution. The nobody of Ienzo, another one of Ansem the Wise's apprentices, Zexion teaches Roxas how to fill his mission gauge before being sent to Castle Oblivion to deal with Marluxia's coup. He ends up antagonizing Riku, sending him to the Destiny Islands and impersonating Sora until Riku ultimately defeats him. Here, he does escape, however. He runs into Axel and the replica Riku, who Axel convinces to kill him and take his power for himself, ultimately defeating Zexion. After reforming, he starts to help the Guardians of Light by trying to decode the journals and bring Roxas back, amongst a few other tasks. Number 7, Syax, the Lunar Diviner, controls Berserkers, uses the attribute of Moon and a claymore called Lunatic. Nobody of Isa and best friend of Lee, the human form of Axel. Syax was a child who lived in Radiant Garden with Axel and joined the organization to try and find one of their lost friends, this friend most likely being Kyrie. With Axel's help, he becomes Xemnas' right-hand man, giving Roxas his missions and sending the ones thought to be traitors to Castle Oblivion for Axel, all the while growing jealous of Axel's growing friendship with Roxas and Shion, forming a large rift between the two friends. He tries to stop Roxas from leaving the organization, but he is defeated and sends the Heartless chasing after him. He is the one who tells Sora of the organization's plans to collect hearts through the use of the Keyblade. He is the main hurdle for Sora in the castle that never was, eventually using the light of Kingdom Hearts to enter his Berserker form and attack. He is ultimately defeated by Sora, and Syax is chosen to be one of the 13 Darknesses. Number 8. Axel, the Flurry of Dancing Flames, controls assassins, uses the attribute of fire and twin chakrams called the Eternal Flames. He's the nobody of Lee and best friend to Isa, the human form of Syax. Axel is in charge of Roxas and Shion, going on missions with them during the day and eating ice cream with them once the missions are complete. He is on site at Castle Oblivion dealing with the traitors by acting as a double agent and attempting to help Syax move up within the ranks of the organization to find a lost friend that they cannot fully remember, as I said, most likely Kyrie, as well as letting Naminé escape and contact Sora. Axel ultimately betrays the organization for his friends, but he cannot stop Roxas from leaving the organization. He eventually finds Roxas in the Twilight Town simulation and attempts to break him out and brings him back to the organization. However, he is unsuccessful when Roxas defeats him again. He then shows up to give Sora and his friends information on the organization. Eventually, he sacrifices himself by putting all of his essence into one last attack, saying he was helping Sora because he wanted to see Roxas. And Sora reminds him of Roxas. After Lee is reformed, he finds the Guardians of Light wanting to learn how to wield a Keyblade, and also rescues Sora, Riku, and Mickey from the 13 Darknesses. When everyone was safe, he surprises them all by summoning his Keyblade, the Bond of the Blaze. Axel is one of the Guardians of Light, and I'm gonna pick up on his story in another video. Number 9, Demyx. The Meliodas Nocturne controls dancers, uses the attribute of water and a sitar called Apregio. We actually don't know whose nobody Demyx is, and he's actually, along with Luxord, the only one that we do not know who their original person was. Demyx goes on missions with Roxas and is tasked with following Sora in order to keep him on the organization's path for him and try to turn Roxas if Sora isn't working out. Eventually, though, Sora does manage to get under his skin, and his usual carefree demeanor just drops and he attacks Sora. He ends up being defeated by Sora in Hollow Bastion. Demyx was chosen as a member of the 13 Darknesses, but is quickly benched and kept as a reserve member. He does, however, eventually betray the Darknesses as well as starts helping Vexen and the Guardians. We don't actually know what becomes of Demyx, as he's not actually defeated in the second Keyblade War, and we don't see him throughout the prologue, so we don't know what Demyx is up to. Number 10, Luxord, the Gambler of Fate. He controls gamblers, uses the attribute of time, as well as cards called Fair Game. His original person is unknown, like Demyx. Luxord would also accompany Roxas on missions. He looks at them as games, and he finds any way he can to play. This is his basic philosophy, and he never really goes back on the rules or bets he makes in his games. Luxord causes chaos for Sora and his friends in Port Royal. Though he loses the treasure, he does manage to create and claim a giant Heartless and take its heart. Luxord faces off against Sora in the organization's castle by removing Sora's friends from him with his cards and forcing Sora to play his game. This is the game he loses, however, with Sora cutting him down and his last words being, "How could you, Roxas?" Number 11, Marluxia, the graceful assassin. Controls Reapers, uses the attribute of Flower and a scythe called Graceful Dahlia. He is the Lord of Castle Oblivion and the nobody of Lorium, one of the main characters of Union Cross. When we first meet Marluxia, he is the mastermind of a rebellion within the organization, attempting to use Naminé's powers to erase Sora's memories and gain the power of the Keyblade for himself. He's ultimately defeated by Sora, however, he was chosen to be brought back as one of the 13 Darknesses. The Savage Nymph controls ninjas, uses the attribute of lightning and 8 knives called Fonder. Larxene is the nobody of Elrina, another character seen in Union Cross. She was one of the members stationed at Castle Oblivion who attempted the coup with Marluxia. Her and Marluxia kind of have a thing. She really does like him, I think, or she at least likes Demyx. It's kind of like back and forth in my opinion. But she was a member of that coup before it was derailed by Axel and was ultimately defeated by Sora. Like Marluxia, she was chosen to be one of the 13 Darknesses. Number 13, Roxas, the Key of Destiny, controls Samurai, uses the attribute of light, and has wielded at least 3 distinct Keyblades. Initially, he wields the Kingdom Key, later dual wielding Oathkeeper and Oblivion. And Roxas is able to dual wield because he's actually the nobody of 2 separate people with Sora, and not only just 2 separate people, he's 2 separate Keyblade wielders, nobodies. The nobody of Sora and Ventus, and is the best friend of Axel and Xion. Roxas truly deserves his own video, but for a quick rundown, he was found by Xemnas, given the name of Roxas, and given the task of collecting hearts for the organization. Since he can use a Keyblade, while he is in the organization, he goes on missions, befriends Axel and Xion, ultimately has to defeat Xion in order for Sora to regain his memories, and defeats Axel to defect from the organization. He ends up going up against Riku, who, by releasing his darkness, defeats and takes Roxas to Diz. Diz is a disguised Ansem the Wise, and is placed in a simulation of Twilight Town. While there, him and his friends try to save money to go to the beach, but this never happens, as thanks to Axel, as well as his own will, he ends up escaping. After that, he goes to Castle Oblivion, meets Naminé, and is told that in order to wake up Sora, he has to essentially stop existing. However, his heart lives on in Sora as well as Ansem the Wise's data. We see Roxas in sort of a outside of time and space thing where he faces off with Sora for one last bit at existence. Though we do not get to see what would have happened if he would have won, since Sora wins, with Roxas stating that he was a good other before fading away. And we see Roxas one final time as sort of a ghost vision where he stays in Sora's heart and he stands there with Naminé going into Kairi's heart. Currently, Roxas is a guardian of light, living with his friends. There is a lot more to go into, but like I said, I'm going to get into that in the Guardians of Light video. And though it's called Organization 13, we actually do have a 14th member in Xion. She uses the attribute of light and the Kingdom Key. Presented as the 14th member, though not considered part of the organization, she is an imperfect female replica of Sora, created from his memories of Kairi, and is the friend of Roxas and Axel. Xion was created as sort of a fallback plan if Sora and Roxas were to fail or turn on the organization, which sort of happens. The plan was for her to absorb Sora's memories, and then upon defeating Roxas, she would be a controllable, complete copy and a Keyblade wielder. So they would send her on missions with Roxas and Axel, eventually becoming friends with them, at one point losing the ability to use the Keyblade, and Roxas lending her his to regain the ability, which does end up working. She tries to flee the organization after realizing what she is doing, but is brought back repeatedly by Axel, who is just trying to keep them all together. Ultimately, she faces off against Roxas, looking like Sora, her transformation almost complete, inevitably being defeated by Roxas, giving him his second Keyblade back, as well as evolving both of them from the Kingdom Keys to Oathkeeper and Oblivion. This, however, actually causes everyone to forget she ever even existed, including her best friends. But she uses Roxas to throw the Oblivion Key to Riku and tells him to stop Roxas before he reaches Xemnas. However, her memory was not completely gone, just went back within Sora as she is connected to his heart, bringing her name back essentially so it's not fully forgotten, and this allows her to come back later on. She appears inside Sora's memory to memory Sora and Riku in Sora's memories of the Destiny Islands. It is also revealed that some of the data from her experiments was found by the organization. They cannot remember who she is, but she is chosen to become a member of the 13 Darknesses. I will cover that in the 13 Darknesses video, but currently she is living with her friends and is a Guardian of Light. And that was the original members of Organization 13. I literally love how most of them obviously miss Roxas, and it just kind of shows you that they were actually developing their own hearts throughout this whole thing. They just didn't realize it. And they all really do want him to come back, even if it's just to further their own goals, but they all feel hurt at his betrayal. And like I said, I'm going to go more in depth on what exactly a nobody is, and I'm going to do a whole video on that and the 13 Darknesses, so please stay tuned for that. And please, guys, go into the comments, drop all your comments on what I missed. Which character would you guys like to see me take a truly deep dive into? Did I miss anything? Would you guys like to see their powers a little bit more fleshed out? And just leave all that in the comments for me down below. And while you're down there, guys, please remember to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another video from me. And I will see you guys in the next video.